In this module, we are going to commence with market failure and functions of government, public goods. Market failure occurs as a result of allocative inefficiency in the market system. The reason for market failure are many, including provision of public goods, presence of externalities, imperfect markets, incomplete markets, etc. Goods can be classified as private, public, merit and demerits. When a person consumes a private good such as a hamburger, it is not available for consumption by others. But when a person consumes a pure public good such as national defense or a radio broadcast, which is the example of public goods, the amount of the good available for the consumption by others is not diminished. The market failure in the provision of public goods arises due to free riding problem. Free riding induces people not to reveal their true valuation of public goods and enjoy these goods without having to pay for them. This calls for the need of government to intervene and eliminate the market failure and provide the optimum level of public good. Let us analyze in detail the market failure in the provision of public goods and the partial and general equilibrium analysis for the optimum production and consumption of public goods. After studying this module, you shall be able to know the meaning of market failure, learn about private, public and merit goods, identify why market failure occurs in the provision of public goods, evaluate the efficiency conditions for the provision of public goods, analyze the case for state provision of public goods. Initially, we will discuss market failure. Market failure has become an increasingly important topic due to its adverse impact on market efficiency. Market failure occurs when resources are inefficiently allocated due to the presence of certain imperfections in the market mechanism. The various types of market failure are positive externalities, when a market exchange confers benefit to a third party, for example, less pollution and noise from cycling. Negative externalities, when a market exchange imposes cost on a third party, for example, environmental degradation from cutting trees for commercial use. Merit goods, these are in the general public interest, but people underestimate the benefit of these goods, for example, education and health. Demerit goods, these are in the disinterest of public, but people underestimate the cost of these goods, for example, smoking, liquor consumption, etc. Public goods, these goods are non-rival and non-excludable, for example, police, national defense, hence under-provided by market mechanism. Monopoly power, a market form where producer has market power to set higher prices. These are higher than optimal. All these market failures need a corrective action which makes the clear case for government intervention. The government intervention is justified in the public interest. There are two types of efficiency that the government is expected to bring about. Allocative efficiency. It occurs when resources are distributed in such a way that no consumers could be made better off without other consumers becoming worse off. This is also called as Pareto efficiency. Productive efficiency. It is achieved when production is carried out at its lowest cost. This implies the minimum optimum point. Next, we will discuss private goods, public goods and merit goods. Most of the goods available in the market are private goods.
They are rival in consumption, which means that consumption by one person reduces the quantity available for the others. Also, private goods are excludable, which implies that consumption of a private good like hamburger excludes the others from consuming it. In short, private goods are those goods which yield satisfaction only to the person who is consuming the good. It excludes or denies others to use that good. For example, a cup of milk consumed by a person gives satisfaction to that person only, and it cannot be consumed by anyone else. A public good, on the other hand, is the opposite to the private good, and it is non-rival and non-excludable in its consumption. The consumption of public good by one person does not reduce its availability for others. Also, it is difficult to exclude people from consuming it. It means that public goods once produced give the same level of satisfaction to all the consumers. Public goods include national defense, dams, clean air, roads, bridges, flood control measures, etc. The non-excludability and non-rivalry are, however, the characteristics of a pure public good. In real world, the public goods may not be completely non-rival in their consumption. It may be possible that excess consumption of a public good like road may lead to congestion, and it will adversely affect the satisfaction derived from the public good. Similarly, not all public goods are non-exclusive in nature. In the provision of a public good like cable television, some houses may be excluded if the cable company refuses to hook up one more hour in their system. It means that there may be some public goods which may be rival but non-excludable, or non-rival but excludable. All such public goods are called impure or quasi-public goods. It must be noted here that for the provision of some public goods such as national defense, bridges and roads, it is customary that the government does the provision. However, it does not hold true vice versa. The public provision does not imply that a good has the characteristics of a public good. There are many goods such as public housing, food stamps and solid bank programs which are not public goods, but they are provided by the government on account of its redistributive role in the economy. It implies that public goods can be and are many times supplied by the private sector. Goods of mass public consumption like radio and television broadcast are often provided by the private enterprises subject only to non-economic regulations. Merit goods are those goods which satisfy all the persons in the society with equal ease. They share their characteristics with private goods, but these goods have extensive positive externalities. In the consumption of merit goods, the social benefits exceed the private benefits. These goods assist an economy to attain a high level of efficiency and also contribute in achieving many basic objectives. These merit goods include education, health, clean environment, vaccination, etc. Apart from merit goods, whose consumption and production is in the broader interest of an economy, there are demerit goods which are considered undesirable for the consumption and whose use is discouraged by the government. The examples of demerit goods or merit bads include tobacco products, liquor, etc. These goods have adverse effect on the people consuming these products, and these also have negative external effect on the social welfare. So, These goods are discouraged by imposing taxes and by imposing market regulations on their consumption and production. Market failure occurs in the provision of merit goods because these are underprovided by the market mechanism. This is because individuals do not take into account the positive externalities that arise from their consumption. This results in the market equilibrium quantity that is lower than the social optimum. Moving on to the public goods and market failure. Public goods does not necessarily imply a good provided by the government. Rather, it means that the good is characterized by two characteristics, that is non-rivalry in consumption and non-exclusion. Non-rivalry in consumption implies that with a given level of production, consumption by one more person need not diminish the quantity consumed by anyone else. Non-exclusion, on the other hand, implies that it is impossible to confine the benefits of a good or a service to a selected group of people. Due to this non-excludable characteristic of pure public goods, it is difficult to charge people for benefiting from a good or service once it is provided. This is because people will have the incentive not to reveal their true preferences for the public goods, thereby free riding on those who accurately state willingness to pay. They might think that the public good will be provided anyway whether they reveal their true marginal valuation for the public good or not. This behavior is called as free riding, meaning that people desire to utilize the public goods without having to pay for it. If this behavior is adopted by all in the market, then even though people derive social benefits from the use of public goods, it will not be provided. Thus, the free rider problem leads to under provision or no provision of a good and thus causes the market failure. The major difference between private good and public good is that in case of the former, each individual consumes different amount but pays same price. This is due to equal marginal valuation by each individual, while in the case of public good, each individual consumes the same amount but marginal valuation may differ. As the public goods are non-excludable, therefore there is no link between payment and provision. This is the reason why public good cannot be provided by the market. For determining the efficient amount of public goods to be provided, the marginal willingness to pay for all individuals should be correctly known. However, non-excludability gives consumers incentive to free ride and understate their willingness to pay. Thus, a fundamental problem in the provision of public goods is regarding the revelation of true preferences. If those who benefit from a public good are asked to contribute an amount reflecting their true valuations, an individual may decide to free ride on the payments of others by understating his contribution. Due to the free rider problem, it is sometimes warranted that government should provide the public goods. This is said with a background condition that government can provide public good and finance it via taxes. This, however, does not resolve the problem of determining the public's aggregate valuation of the good and thus the decision whether it should be supplied at all or not. The public or private provision of public goods can be efficient only when the individuals could be excluded from consuming the public good based on their revelation and free rider problem could be resolved. For example, not allowing satellite dish ownership, free reception of cable television induces customers to pay for the service. Therefore, by including excludability and thereby solving free riding problem, the efficient provision of public goods can be achieved. Now, we will discuss the efficiency condition for the provision of public goods. The usual demand and supply analysis can be used in order to find out the optimal level of public good to be provided. Assuming a perfectly competitive market, the marginal cost curve would serve as the supply curve of the public good. As people will demand public good on the basis of marginal benefit they derive from the consumption of these goods, marginal benefit curves for all individuals will be added together in order to derive the aggregate demand or total demand curve. Samuelson provided a theoretical partial equilibrium solution for public goods. According to it, the marginal benefit curve or the representative demand curves will be added vertically for deriving aggregate demand curve. The point at which this intersects the supply curve, the optimal level of public good is determined.
Now, let us see the optimum provision of public good in partial equilibrium. In the given figure, MB represent demand or willingness to pay for the public good. The sum of MB represent aggregate demand which when intersects with MC or the supply curve, we get the optimal quantity of public good. The above analysis is based on the partial equilibrium analysis, but in reality, public goods are consumed along with private goods. Thus, the general equilibrium analysis will determine the optimal quantity of public good along with a given quantity of private good. For this, the Samuelson condition is considered, which says that for the efficient provision of public goods, the combination of private and public goods should be such that further substitution of private goods for public goods will result in a decrease in social utility. For this, the condition is summation MRS is equals to MRT, where MRS is the marginal rate of substitution for public and private goods for all individuals and MRT is the economy's marginal rate of transformation between public good and arbitrarily chosen private goods. Let us consider the general equilibrium for the provision of public goods. Assume that an economy has two consumers and they consume two goods, private and public. In given figure, TT shows the production possibilities for the economy. All points 4, 8, 2 on this curve shows optimum or efficient combinations of private and public goods. Its slope is MRT-GX, where G is public good and X is private good. To determine how should resources be allocated and what combinations of private and public goods should be produced, we use the Samuelson approach. Samuelson's approach is to decide first how well off a person or individual is going to be and then search for the combinations of private and public goods which make the other person as well off as possible. If we fix the level of welfare of A at IA to the power 2, it means that A will consume OG of G and G1 of X. Individual B will also consume OG of G and the difference between G2 and G1, that is G3 of X, if the economy operated efficiently. Repeating the process for each possible output of public good, we derive CC. CC curve represents the consumption possibilities available to individual B, assuming A is kept on IA to the power 2. It is derived by deducting IA to the power 2 from TT, bearing in mind that when units of public goods are provided for one individual, these are provided for other individuals too. Welfare of B is maximizing at 3, where his IC is tangent to CC. So, The Pareto optimum resource allocation for the economy would be OG public goods and G2 private good. At point 3, tangency has been found by deducting MRSGX for A from MRTGX and then equating MRSGX for B to the slope of CC. MRSGX for B is equals to MRTGX minus MRSGX for A, or submission MRSGX for I is equals to MRTGX.
Next, we will understand the case for the state provision of public goods. Public goods are those goods and services which are clearly in demand, but on account of their non-excludability, they are not normally provided by the private sector. This is because the private sector would be unable to supply them for a profit. Private sector thus works best in the provision of private goods, which relies on the market mechanism, and people reveal their true preferences by demanding those goods because these goods are completely excludable. There are many social benefits associated with making public goods available. Whenever we talk about the social benefits, the role of governments as a welfare state comes to the fore. So, it is up to the government to decide what output of public goods is appropriate for the society. The case for public provision of public goods is based upon the following reasons. First, due to the characteristics of public goods being non-excludable, that is, the goods cannot be confined to those who have paid for it, and non-rival in consumption, that is, the consumption of one individual does not reduce the availability of goods to the others. For example, include flood control system, street lighting, the police, parks, roads and national defense. Second, due to the free riding. The free rider principle says that people will not be charged a correct price for the provision of a non-excludable good because people will understate their marginal benefit from the public good and would try to free ride or not to pay for the public good. Thus, direct provision of public goods by the government can help to overcome the free rider problem, which leads to the market failure. Third, availability of financing alternatives. Many public goods which raise the social welfare are provided more or less free at the point of use and then paid for out of general taxation or other forms of charge such as license fee. The government, to supply public goods, can therefore either directly or indirectly contracting out services, in both cases fund the services through subsidy and or taxation. Fourth, maximization of social welfare. There are various types of public goods which are crucial from the point of view of social welfare but are not optimally produced. In case of such public goods, state provision may help to prevent the under-provision and under-consumption so that the social welfare is improved. Fifth, cost efficient. As public goods are goods of mass consumption, their provision on a large scale may confer benefits of scale economies. Therefore, if the government provides public goods, they may be able to do so more efficiently because of economies of scale. Another reason for state provision of public goods is merit needs. There are certain public goods which are merit in the sense that their social benefits are greater than the private benefit, and it is the interest of the economy to produce and consume such goods on a large scale. Healthcare, education and pensions are a few examples of such goods. These goods are generally underconsumed and underprovided under the market mechanism. One reason for the underprovision is that individuals find it difficult to make rational choices when the costs arise today and the benefits are only received in the future. Free market forces or private provision will result in inefficient outcomes. It therefore makes sense for the government to intervene and force the individuals to make contributions that will safeguard them against illness and retirement. The beneficiary of education will often not only be the person who has to pay for it, but the whole economy who can benefit from the educated population and workforce. It implies that external benefits will be the gain to the society as a whole. Somebody who is unable to read or write could be deemed as a burden on society, as they would more than likely need supporting, whereas an educated individual would contribute to the welfare of the nation. Educated people will also have higher incomes that result in higher property tax revenues. Educated communities typically have lower crime levels and more voter participation. In fact, it will not be wrong to say that an educated population is a public good because of the positive externalities educated people spill over. This leads to the case for some of the government provision of these goods, because market mechanism will educate only those who have the capacity to pay for getting educated. Similar is the case for health facilities. A healthy population is an asset for the economy, and private provision of health facilities will also lead to under-provision and under-consumption. There can also be other arguments for government provision of public goods. Air quality is also a public good that is underprovided in a private market. Therefore, there are a number of potential government responses to poor air quality. Let us now summarize what we have learned in this module. First, market failure occurs when resources are inefficiently allocated due to the presence of certain imperfections in the market mechanism. Second, public goods are characterized by non-rivalry in consumption and non-excludability. Third, free riding problem leads to the market failure in the provision of public goods. Fourth, public goods provision has various social benefits associated with it, so it is the responsibility of government to provide optimal level of public goods. Fifth, the general equilibrium condition for optimum public goods is submission MRS is equals to MRT, that is, submission of marginal rate of substitution is equals to the marginal rate of transformation.